We would like to acknowledge that the episodes in this series are produced on the traditional unceded lands of the Coast Salish peoples, which includes the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We thank them for allowing us to be their guests.
Essentially the same format in that we've asked people about their childhood, how they got started, when they got bitten by the arts bug, if they got any support at that time, or if they got blocked or had to overcome things in order to find their dream, and then kind of how they progressed toward that and into the career and all that. But I was thinking about this now. I was thinking, in your writing, you've covered all that.
Yes.
And it's out there for everybody to see. So why don't we start with where you are now, and what you're doing now, and where you want to go, and stuff like that, which is usually the last act of all the other interviews, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's a better idea, because like you say, it's all out there anyway, so there won't be anything new. Yeah.
But like I say, just feel free to, and if you play footsie, if you want. Okay, so, here we are. And it's great to see you, and I'm glad we're here, so shoot.
Oh, okay, so we're recording already?
Yeah, we're recording.
Oh,
we're recording. It's going really well. The cameras are on. I'm in focus, supposedly, and you are definitely, so we're good.
So you want me to say what I'm doing right now?
I want you to say what you're doing right now. Yeah.
Okay, so right now I'm doing a couple of things. I'm a core artist at Electric Company Theatre, and my play is about to receive its world premiere in the fall. It's called Fire Never Dies, the Tina Modotti Project. So I'm writing and directing it. It's a huge piece. And we just had a 2-week workshop and had the public come in for the last day of the workshop, and all of that was very, very informative for me. So I'm currently writing the next draft. So there's a few more drafts that I need to write, in tandem with having meetings with designers who need answers to things, right? Because we're going to rehearsals in October, which is very fast, as you know, right? In the theater, that's a very quick turnaround. So I'm happy where it's at. There's still a lot of work to do. I love the creative team that we've put together. And I also, I'm really only interested, I've always been this way in the arts, in taking real risks, not just in content, definitely, but also in form. And so if something doesn't scare me, then I'm not interested. And I feel like I can also sense that in other people's work. Like when I go see a play and I feel like it's really safe,
right.
I'm just not interested, right? Even if you can't put your finger on it, right? You can feel that.
It's just too easy.
Yeah, is this playwright, or are these artists taking a real risk, and what is the risk? So what I'm trying to get at is that the characters in this play are real people from history, right, from 100 years ago, and they're the main characters of the play, including the main character, Tina Modotti, who was this photographer in the 1920s. They were all communists. They were in the Communist Party, and they practiced what they preached, and they put their lives on the line for what they believed in. And that kind of content is risky to put on stage in Canada, which is, as far as I can tell, is a deeply, deeply anti-communist nation, like deeply, deeply anti-communist. And the theater industry, I have always seen it as, generally speaking, having a liberal politic. Right? So this is not a liberal politic, what is being presented in this play. So that's the risk, right? My experience as a person who has never been in the Communist Party My experience in Canada, when you say the word communist, people either hear Khmer Rouge or Stalin,
It's a
or
trigger.
yeah,
Yeah.
or
Fidel.
baby
Yeah, yeah,
eating.
yeah.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of Fidel.
Yeah.
Baby eating monsters, or
Yeah, yeah.
and
yeah.
that's not my responsibility,
Yeah.
right? That's people can hear whatever they want, but that's generally speaking what people hear in the theater industry in Canada when you say the word communist, right?
Sure.
So the big risk in this play is that you hear the word communist like 10,000 times in the play because these people are communists. And it's also, the risk is also in the form, right? I'm really playing with form, and it's not out of nowhere. I grew up, my very, very, very early childhood was in Chile, and I would, my parents would take me to the theater in Chile, all kinds of theater, and what is a very popular Chilean theater is called zarzuela. And zarzuela actually comes from Spain from centuries ago. And during the conquest, of course, it made its way to Latin America. And every country has done its own thing with it based
Right.
on, the indigenous traditions of that country, etc., right? So what it is, what zarzuela is there's definitely a story that is being told, but you can literally do anything. So you're telling a story in one genre, then all of a sudden it's a musical for like 5 minutes, then all of a sudden it's a soap opera for 5 minutes. Now we're into film noir. Oh, now we're singing again.
Right.
And that's zarzuela. That's
Right,
Chilean
right.
zarzuela,
Okay.
right? And so that's how a lot of my plays are like that.
Right.
And I would say that it's because of systemic racism. There's a lot of judgment in regard to the form of my play with a lot of assumption, as opposed to, why don't you just ask her what she's doing? There's actually a rhyme and reason to what she's doing, which is from a different culture. That's
Right.
all, and a different way of telling a story. So that's what I'm doing in this play, right?
Right.
I've got film noir, I've got naturalism, I've got catwalks, I've got singing, plus the whole multimedia aspect, because I'm telling the story of these artists who are communists. And I'm really leaning into that, right? Really leaning into their communism, without being critical of it,
Sure.
without being like, oh, isn't this terrible? Weren't they dumb? Oh, they were short-sighted. They didn't see what it actually was. I'm not doing that, because I've seen that 1,000 times,
Yeah.
and I'm interested in doing something different.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's cool.
Uh-huh.
That's really good. I like that. I like the fact that you're changing it up.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I had started work on a novel about Mexico, and I had done a ton of research on this. I went down there, I went to all the locations. I had a wonderful man who was a professor taking me around and I don't have the language, so I needed somebody like that. And it was a historical story. I was trying to tell that story with a fictional character cut into it. And I ran right into this thing where people didn't want it. People didn't care, and systemic racism, systemic willful blindness, not even paying attention to this event that occupied Mexico for, I don't know, 20 years, killed, I read one statistic, killed 1 in 8. It's a huge number of people to die. And I really found that to be just disheartening. It almost just made me numb trying to defeat that. In the end, I couldn't do it. You've got credibility. You are who you are, and you're an authentic person. You can speak from your heart. You do all the time. I congratulate you for taking on something like that and all the different hurdles. It's not easy. I know that.
Yeah.
And plus, like you say, dealing with all the designers.
Yeah. Work with
you know,
and are asking
and
great
the
questions.
actors,
Yeah.
and, you know, and all that, right?
Yeah.
You know, so that's
Yeah.
great. Well,
Yeah.
you're just working away at that, right?
Yeah, I'm working away at that, and I'm working on a novel. So I've written 2 memoirs, and now I'm writing a novel, which is super fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's challenging, of course, as all endeavors are.
A lot of words.
Yeah, but I've done that before, like with the memoirs, right?
Yeah,
A lot
yeah.
of words.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to do a novel where I don't have to worry about, oh God, so-and-so is gonna get upset that I'm mentioning this in this memoir, and even though I've changed their name and their identifying characteristics, they're still gonna get upset. Okay, I better phone them and run it by them. You know, I don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great.
And I always worry about the history,
Right.
you know, because there's all these people who are aware of the history, and you think, oh, they're gonna read this, and it's not gonna be right, you know. And I worry about the locations and the names of the streets and all that, you know, like, oh my God, you know, like, oh, you find out, oh, that wasn't the name of the street, they changed the name of the street, you know, stuff like that. It's really, really crazy. You must write like all the time if you're writing a novel and you're also doing this thing.
Well, I try to write all the time, but I'm also, you know, a self-employed artist, so I have to be juggling a whole bunch of balls all the
Yeah,
time. You know,
yeah.
I do still audition for film and TV, which takes up so much time,
Oh God,
and
yes.
so it's such a huge effort.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably spend 10 to 15 or sometimes 20 hours a week just running my business, right? Just like answering emails, staying on top of things, not being an artist, right? But one could argue that is part of being an artist.
That's
Yeah.
what I learned.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah, yeah.
They never
Yeah.
tell you about that much in school,
Right.
really.
Yeah.
It's all about getting into your core and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they never tell you about taxes either.
Oh, I know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess you're like a multiple citizen. Are you still a citizen in Chile?
No,
No, no.
I'm just a Canadian
Yeah,
citizen,
yeah.
yeah.
Are you traveling now? You were in Montreal recently? Or
Yeah, I went to Montreal because there was a project where they translated my play Anywhere But Here, which was the last play I did with the Electric Company, into French. So I went to a workshop of it, and then there was like a public reading of it, and it was great. Yeah,
cool.
it was great. So I have no clue what's going to happen with that, but it's just fantastic to have met the translator, to listen to it in French. What else am I doing travel-wise? Yeah, there's a few things, but nothing set in stone yet.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, that's the last one. That's the last travel-related
Well, you'll
work thing
probably be
that I
traveling
did.
pretty soon, you know.
I hope so. I'm going to Victoria this weekend.
Good. For fun,
Yeah,
or is that
no, to
business?
meet with the costume designer for
Oh, yeah.
Fire Never Dies.
Oh,
Yeah.
right, okay,
Mhm.
cool. That's now, her life spans, gee, she died when she was 45,
Yeah,
right?
in 1942.
Yeah. So it spans from the 1900 or something, or 1890,
Yeah,
something like that?
1898, I think, yeah.
Like, so you first
Yeah.
encounter her when she's a young woman, 17, something,
Uh-huh.
18, something like that. So pre-First World War, right into the Second World War, the dirty
Yeah.
30s, right?
Yeah. Well, and then she ran the Red Aid Hospital in Madrid during the Spanish Civil War.
So she's there too, in Madrid.
Yeah, that's Act Two. Act Two is all of
Yeah,
that. Yeah, yeah,
What a life, eh?
yeah.
I'm just thinking of, about Tina Modotti as a photographer, and there was a photographer who was started out as Robert Capa's assistant, and she was killed there.
Oh.
Yeah, she was
In
another.
Spain?
Yeah, in Spain in the Civil War. I can't remember her name. It drives me crazy, but I've seen some of her photographs, and she, another one of these kind of groundbreaking, women back in a time when,
Yeah.
women didn't do a whole lot of that stuff.
Uh-huh.
Well, so you're doing a novel, and you're doing this big play.
Yeah, and then, you know, auditioning for film and TV.
Yeah, and audition for film and TV. Well,
Yeah.
you know, how's your heart rate?
Oh, it's fine. But yeah, the film and TV thing, oh my God, it's so time consuming.
I had a good time. I liked acting. I've always liked acting.
Oh, I love that. I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about the audition
Yeah,
process.
and,
That's all.
and I
Yeah.
hated the audition
Yeah, yeah.
process, and
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do it, and that was another thing that I never learned. And I didn't go to theater school. I was a creative writing student, right? You know, it was so soul destroying a lot. And then I guess it's been self-taping, right? If
Yeah.
you've been having to do all that.
Yeah, yeah, it's
That's
all
what it all
self-taping.
is now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So you never even see these people until you
No.
get the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Boy, that sucks.
yeah.
I think.
And I don't know how to do it either. I'm learning. I'm always learning how to do it.
Yeah.
I think that everybody feels that way.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think everybody feels like they don't know how to audition.
Yeah.
At least that's what I've heard.
But we can go back and talk about your childhood and how you got here. No, I don't want to do that.
I've done it in books.
I know you
Every
have.
single interview I do, people go on and on about it
Yeah,
and
yeah,
ask
yeah.
me to talk about
Fed
it.
up. Fed up with my child. I don't even like my childhood anymore. Yeah. You know. Do you go back? Do you ever go back down to Chile?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I was there just over, let me think, no, 18 months ago. I was there for 2 weeks. I went for there was a, how do you say that? There was a vote on a new constitution. So there was a constitution in place that was Pinochet's constitution. Yeah. And that's a very long backstory, which I won't
Yeah,
get into,
yeah.
but it was still in place. And so there was a whole, a series of constituent assemblies that were truly representative of all sectors of Chilean society that came up with a new constitution, which was, some people say it was the most progressive, one of the most progressive constitutions in the world, 18 months ago. And then there was a plebiscite. So you voted, yes, I want this new constitution to go forward, which would have been also another process. It wouldn't just
Sure.
automatically have been put
Sure.
forth as a new constitution. But let's
Yeah.
take the next steps to make it be the next constitution. Or no, we don't want this new constitution. So I went for that to Chile, and on the night of the vote, or the night that the vote was announced, I was in this square, which is called Plaza Italia, but which has been renamed by the people, Dignity Square, Plaza Dignidad, because that was the epicenter of an uprising that took place that led to the writing of this new constitution, right? And this uprising went on for many months, and it was led by high school students.
That's great.
Yeah, it was great. And there was a very, very high cost to what led to the writing of this new constitution, which is that many people lost their lives during that uprising to the hands of the militarized police in Chile and the secret police in Chile, who are trained by the Israelis. And so the Israelis go there and train them how to deal with protesters in the same way that the Israelis deal with the Palestinians in Gaza.
That's
So they
great.
target children, of course, and teenagers, and they shoot at your eyes. So a few hundred protesters lost their eyes during those protests. So there was a very, very high cost to what finally led to this plebiscite. And so I was there at the epicenter of where the uprisings had taken place, waiting for the results to come in, with tons and tons of people, and talking to many young people that were there. And we lost. Yeah, we lost the vote. So then
How much? How much fine?
very high, yeah.
Wow.
And this is because the right wing put in millions and millions and millions of dollars into a marketing campaign that would stop this new constitution from winning, right? So it was, all over social media. They own the press, of course. They own the TV channels. And just this very negative propaganda about what would happen to Chile if this new constitution were to be put forth, that it would just be chaos, and just extremely right-wing propaganda, right? Like
Right.
Immigrants are going to take over, the indigenous folks of Chile are going to take all our land, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right?
We
So
won't have any more copper.
what's that?
We won't have any more copper.
Oh, they don't
Just
care
so-
about that.
They don't care about that.
They just want the copper to be in the hands of multinationals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So we lost. But it was, I love that place, and that's where I feel most at home, because it is my home. And it was just an extraordinary night to be there. And then, terrible things happened, of course. The repression was immediate. Like as soon as we lost,
Bam.
the military police surrounded the entire area, right?
Yeah.
And it got very, very ugly very, very quickly.
Jeez.
Yeah. And then there was, it's too long a backstory that is not interesting, but there was a group of us, we were driving to my hotel, and I saw something from the van on our way home. And because of my background of being in the underground resistance movement when I was a teenager, well, late teens, early 20s, in the 80s against the Pinochet dictatorship, I see things that if I had not been involved, I probably wouldn't see. So I saw something, right? I saw a teenage boy who was obviously from the front lines of the protests, from the way he was dressed and the way he presented. Because, the way that the protests happen, they're very, very organized. They're the front lines, and if you're on the front lines, you are fighting the military police.
Yeah.
And you are going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And then there's a second line and a third line, et cetera, et cetera. And the elders are at the very back, right? So the first few lines are protecting the elders and people who, for whatever reason, are not in the front lines, right? Disabilities, whatever. They don't want to be in the front lines. So the front lines is mostly young people.
Right.
And when we were driving home after we lost and the shit hit the fan at Plaza Dignidad with the military, as an aside, I had a 21-year-old German film student with me who goes to film school in Concordia and who had never been to the Global South. And his life is forever changed from before Chile and after Chile. But that night he was at Plaza Dignidad with us, and he was beyond impressed by the folks that were there, and also just horrified. Like it was the first time he ever experienced tear gas, et cetera,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Being sprayed with, the water tanks, all of that.
Yeah.
But we were driving to my hotel, and I looked to the side, and I saw a teenage boy from the front lines being held by the cops against the gate to a house, and I said to myself, "Oh, that's a secret police house." I just knew.
Right.
Yeah. So we stopped the car. I got out of the car, which was a very dangerous thing to do, but I didn't care. Yeah, and I went and confronted the situation.
The guy.
Yeah, well, I confronted the cops.
Yeah,
and
yeah. That's what
This teenage boy was being held against this gate. The house had no address on it. There were lots of cameras. There were plain cars, like plain police cars, undercover cars, inside the gate, and there was a secret policeman on the other side of the gate yelling at the boy. It was a secret police house.
Yeah.
So I just confronted them, and I'm making a long story short. I actually was there with a camera crew. So this camera crew, the cameraman was filming all of this, and so they started to shit their pants, right? Because I said in front of them, so make sure that you filmed the license plate of this cop car, you know. And I kept saying to the boy, "What is your name? Just tell me your name." And then the secret police guy who was behind the gate was yelling at me. He didn't give a shit. He was yelling, "This is our house, and we do whatever we want with these kids in this house. We do whatever we want." So then they threw the kid into the back of the cop car and they took him away. And so then the next few days were all about looking for the kid. So, you know, through all my contacts and connections, we ended up getting this lawyer who is a human rights lawyer in Santiago, who has taken it upon himself for many, many years now to represent families whose family members were disappeared during the dictatorship or murdered during the dictatorship, and taking the military to court. Because the state of Chile, up until that time, had never taken it upon themselves as the state of Chile, right, to do trials for crimes against humanity. So there are many trials going on in Chile for crimes against humanity, but it's not the actual state of Chile that's doing them, right? So this lawyer would get together a bunch of families with loved ones who had disappeared or had been murdered and do the trials. So, and he's very renowned, like he's not afraid to show his face. So he's always on the evening news and on talk shows, and you know, he does deal with death threats. He leads a dangerous life that way. But we're like, oh, he's the guy, right? So we had to, we went back to the scene of the crime, as it were, but we parked around the corner, and we put we hit a microphone on him, and he went and rang the doorbell to the secret police house. He's like, hi. So the other night,
I'm from Greenpeace.
the other night we saw this happen.
Yeah.
I don't remember if he said that at the top or not. I think he might have said that at the top or not. Anyway, he went into the house for like 15 minutes. You're like, oh yeah, come on in, right?
Yeah.
And we're around the corner, like listening to the whole thing. And then he came out and he's like, yeah, like they're prepared for anything, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, isn't it great? You know, this is a reform house for young kids who are delinquents, right? And then he went to he figured out where the cop car, which police station the cop car. Anyway, they kept saying, we have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
He's like, well, I've seen the footage. There's this teenage boy who's being held against the gate here the night of the plebiscite. After everything went down at the square. I've seen the footage, and they're like, we have no clue what you're talking about. We've never heard of this boy. We have no clue. And so then he went to the police station that this police car belonged to and did the same thing. He's like, so, you know, I have the footage, They're like, we have no clue what you're talking about. We have no idea what you're talking about. So all we could hope for is that they were scared enough that they just dumped him in the street, like after they threw him into the back of the car, and let him go, and didn't do anything else to him. That's all we can hope for. But anyway, a lot of stuff happened on that last trip to Chile. That's just one of the many things. But that's what I love about it, right? Is that people are not apathetic.
No.
Right? You know, it's multi-generational. You know, we joined a protest one day that the high school students had taken over the streets, demanding free public education, all kinds of rights for the citizens in general. And there were, how old were they? They were between 11 years old and 18 years old, including university students. these kids know how to organize.
Yeah.
You know, they take over the main avenue, which is the Alameda, which I guess would be the equivalent of like Sunset Boulevard in LA or something, right?
Sure.
And right downtown, they just take it over, they shut the whole thing down, no traffic passes through, and they protest. And the leaders are often girls, like 14-year-old girls. And they know exactly what they're doing, they know exactly why they're there.
What's the future going to be? What do you think?
In Chile?
Yeah.
Oh, God, I always have great hopes
Are
for
they
the
going
future.
to try for a new constitution?
Well, then
again,
the extreme right wing came up with a new constitution to vote on, which was worse than Pinochet's constitution. And so then that was voted on, when was that? I think in December, and it was voted down, thank God. So now we're kind of back at square one
right.
with the constitution. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
What bothers me about what's going on in the United States is it's just it's going to slow everything down. It's going to just completely drain the energy out of anything that needs to be done in terms of, fixing the world a little bit. I've got we have a little grandson now, and he's going to be, if he lives as long as I do, he'll be my age in like 2095, something like that. And I just think, oh, this kid is going to live, his whole life is going to be defined by the climate. I'm really, really worried about that. It's just one of those, I just feel very helpless a lot of the time. It's a terrible feeling. Yeah. Your story is so compelling. The stuff that you've had to go through is, is way up there, and totally compelling. I'm glad you said yes to this.
Oh, well, thanks for having me.
I'm sure we could talk about something else.
Yeah.
We haven't. What's our time like?
No, I think we've only been doing this for like half an hour.
Is that right?
No, 40 minutes.
Oh, okay.
40 minutes?
Yeah, 40
Okay.
minutes. We've got time. I want to know more about Carmen's novel.
That's good. Yeah, tell us about that.
Oh, I don't know if I should.
Oh.
Well, you don't want to spoil it.
I don't want to really.
Can you, let's see,
Or maybe just what inspired you to write a novel.
Yeah. I don't really want to talk about the novel. Feels like too early.
No, I know what you mean,
Yeah, like I've chosen to write a novel as opposed to a memoir, for example, because it's complete freedom to let my imagination take me wherever it wants to take me. The amount of material that I want to put into this novel would equal like 20,000 plays, right? So, not going to do that, right? And I also like, as much as I love the collaborative aspect of the theater, I also like the independence of just me sitting and writing. So it's a great balance right now to be writing this huge play for the theater, as I'm also writing this novel, which is just me, and I don't have to be thinking about anything else.
Yeah.
Right? It's just me with the words,
Right.
and bringing all of the skill set that one has after 30 years of writing plays, right? That I think are really helpful. Like when you bring that skill set to a different form, right? Like very basic things about playwriting, which I'm not saying they're easy to achieve, but they're basic, right? Is who are these people? Why should we care about them? And we need to know this on page one, right? Otherwise, where the person's not going to keep reading the novel, right? And how do we get the reader to care about these people? Well, you have to say immediately what they want and why they're not going to get it, right?
Yeah.
Because there has to be a massive barrier, right?
Yeah.
So what's at stake? This is playwriting 101. I'm not saying this is an easy thing to pull off, right? But we need to see the character is struggling with something immediately, and we need to care about these characters. We need to feel for them, right? So all of those things I think are an asset, right? That I can bring to writing novels.
Yeah.
Or this novel in particular. It's the first one that I'm writing. Yeah.
Do you write when you're in bed and you're going to sleep, and you're in that little place before you finally nod off? Do you like think about page one, chapter one? You know, she's walking down the street.
Yes.
I do that too.
Yeah.
I do that way.
I mean, and I won't get into the novel, but it does take place over the 20th century in Chile.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And it starts in the 1930s and goes all the way to the 1980s. So it's also like the amount of research that it requires to do something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, 1930s, like just very basic things like the fashion, the music.
Prices.
Right, all of that.
Prices.
Yeah. So then, you're going to sleep and you've just done a whole bunch of research and you're trying to go to sleep and you're like, oh, right, I just learned about this radio drama that was like the #1 radio drama in Chile in 1938.
Yeah.
I know who could be listening to that one. This character, yes, they're going to be listening to this radio drama. Like, the research also keeps going into the night.
Yeah, I love that. And figuring out what the hit songs were.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. You know,
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. That part of it. You learn a lot.
Yeah, you
You
do.
learn a lot.
Yeah.
It's always nice to learn a lot.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. You know?
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I can't wait. I do hope that works out for you. I'm sure it will. You know, I think people will be happy to publish the novel. You know?
I hope so. Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about? Anything you want to talk about at all? Complaints. What's pissed
awful
you
about
off
these
lately,
things.
other than secret policemen and children? You know.
Oh gosh. I mean, I think the big observation that I would have about the current state of affairs, certainly I'll just talk about North America or Canada, because I don't claim to talk for anything or about anything else in terms of the arts.
Yeah.
I guess that the observation that I have, which is troubling to me, and I've had it for a while, about the state of the arts and the state of academia in North America is this, what I call identitarianism.
Okay.
Which is, it's all about, it's identity politics.
It's about who you are.
Yeah, identity, what you're.
Authentically who you are.
Well, it's about identity politics that's not actually rooted in class, right? So you are expected to say what your identity is, right? And weaponize your identity in a way where you are really playing up that you are oppressed without ever mentioning your social class. And that is an issue for me, right? So what I have noticed, I mean, I've talked about this before, and you know, it is on video, so I don't want to get into it too much because it's a repetition. What I have noticed, which I think is really unfortunate, is that all we're doing is sending working class, white, cis het young men to the right. That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing, because we're telling them to shut the fuck up, that they are so privileged, and it's like, are we really saying that a young white man, I'm just making this up right now,
Sure.
Who's from a northern British Columbia town, raised by a single mother who's a cook at a diner.
From a low income situation.
Totally minimum wage situation, right?
Yeah.
are we really saying that that should not be taken into account when we compare that to a brown person who, I'm making this up, was raised in Shaughnessy in an upper class neighborhood?
Or just someone else. Someone else of a higher class.
Yes.
I get it,
Yeah, so that's really troubling to me. And the other thing that I've noticed is, speaking of risk-taking in art, I don't see a lot of risks being taken because I think people are afraid. People are afraid of being canceled, basically, of being canceled because there seems to be this trend, right, where if I accuse you, let's say you write a play and you put it up, right, and I come along and say that is offensive and it has caused me harm. It would seem like that's all it takes for you to somehow be vilified.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And I think we're going down a very dangerous path for two reasons with this. We're creating really safe, boring art, which oftentimes I find very preachy towards the audience and is making a lot of assumptions about the audience. That is just that the audience needs to be taught, or the audience needs to be kind of made to feel bad somehow, right?
The assumption is they don't know this.
Yes.
And I'm going to fix that.
Yeah. And then the other problem, right, is that if I demand that any play be canceled because it is offensive to me, right, and then I'm actually not being very strategic and not being very smart, right? Because next year when my play goes up and a group of people go, this is extremely offensive. It's very harmful because it's about a bunch of communists. And that is very offensive to me, and it is, to me, it's harmful.
I
right?
survived, blah, blah, blah.
So cancel it. And you have to cancel it because I saw you demand that something else be canceled last year because it was offensive to you. We're in dangerous territory, you know? So these things are, I wouldn't say they're on my mind, like I sit there thinking about them all the time. But it's just something I'm noticing, and I'm wondering, well, what is going to happen to the quality of the art? Like, I personally am not interested in morality plays that are posing as realism, which is, I'm seeing some of that. And take a real risk, you know, take a real risk, and just, you know, we do not have the right to not be offended. If something is offensive to you, then you have all kinds of things you can do. You can either not go to the play, you can go to the play and write a super harsh critique of it and publish it everywhere. That's totally your right. You can, you know, if you feel so inclined, like if you feel really, really passionate about it, stand in front of the theater with a banner, right? There's all kinds of things you can do, right? If you didn't know it was offensive to you and you're sitting there watching it and you're realizing, I can't even sit through this because it's harming me so much, you can walk out, right? I think there's all kinds of things that we can do other than, as fellow artists, demand that a piece of artwork be canceled.